And in the first article that I reviewed, the teacher evaluation heads to the courts. Really, there was a lot of different strategies that were tried here, and so the kind of the summation statement is the strategies are diverse. They're hinging on both procedural and the substantive complaints, and they included a lot of different challenges, from the use of standardized test scores, merit pay, enacting new evaluation procedures incorrectly, the use of school-wide growth measures and non-tested subjects. Those first four there, those actually had been completed. And then the ones in red below, these were, at least at the time of the writing of this article, were still in progress. And so things like using flawed data in New Mexico, not accounting for poverty differences in New York with test scores and student growth, the evaluation inconsistencies, again in New York, teachers were going from effective to ineffective in a matter of just sequential years. The removal of teacher rights in Nevada. Nevada was challenging the tenure removal of teachers. Pay based on only a portion of a student's success in Tennessee. There was a miscalculation. And then vague student growth requirements. Excuse me. Like in Texas, certain teachers were at more risk in these situations. What I found that was kind of interesting in these court cases is that of all the court cases that had been completed and decided, all of those cases had sided with the state. Instead of the teachers or the unions that were challenging, all of these had sided, the courts have sided with the state in those cases. And looking at the second article, teacher evaluation and the issue overview, there were significant changes that were implemented, and some of this was due to new research on teacher quality. There was a paper by Eric Hanishuk that said that top teachers actually accounted for more than a year's worth of growth for the students, while ineffective teachers would get about a half a year's worth of growth out of their students. There was some interest from private parties and interested groups. The Gates Foundation was providing $700 million to schools for some changes, looking at changing how schools operated. There were efforts by advocacy groups and policymakers. Advocacy groups, they state that quality control systems were ineffective. They cited that in 12 districts that were looked at, 99% of the teachers were rated as satisfactory. And the current efforts did not distinguish good teachers from bad teachers. They wanted to give better info to the districts that could strengthen about their strengths and weaknesses. That could help. It could help tailor district support for these teachers. And then there's political pressure to dismiss poor-performing teachers. The race to the top funds, the $4.3 billion that were at stake. Districts wanted to quickly identify and remove bad teachers, and they wanted to measure student achievement. So therefore, states kind of, in response, rewrote some laws. They have states and districts individually determine policies on things like collective bargaining, some additional nuances, and so by states changing many of the laws, it's kind of led to some non-congruent rating systems where proficiency varies by state. So you can have a teacher that's proficient in one state that will actually do the same things in another state but be labeled as not proficient. And then the states have also included other policies, things like teacher compensation or merit pay, how teachers are promoted or dismissed. A lot of this can be based off of student outcomes. So, new teacher evaluation systems have since then been enacted. Most of these weigh heavily on periodic observation. It utilizes key teaching standards, like the ones from the Framework for Teaching by Charlotte Danielson. And districts and states differ on the requirements for the observations. So, whether the frequency, they're announced beforehand, who conducts them, and so they differ widely. And they can differ on how they utilize test scores, but most of them do utilize test scores to be more objective. Things like the value-added model. Critics state that this is subject to considerable degree of random error. Um, and so some states have used the growth measures, which is a simpler approach, but maybe even more problematic. Um, and most states initially based about half of the teacher review process on student achievement, but many have since then scaled it back. The teachers' unions have shown concerns to this. They cite the volatility of test scores. Some teachers have more students with special needs or challenging home lives. Um, and it encourages teachers to use unproductive teaching methods like test prep. And it unfairly sometimes uh, it's unfair to teachers of non-tested subjects as they might be evaluated on students that they don't even teach or see at all. And so the response that the teachers unions have had to this have been several different lawsuits, many different lawsuits. And kind of like as we said earlier, so far most of those lawsuits have kind of gone in favor of the state, or the states. So the evidence for the effectiveness of this is unclear at this time. Some have definitely been positive. Seen some positive effects, but many new systems are in the process of testing and refinement, so it's probably a little too soon to really see the effectiveness, the true effectiveness, but it's going to likely be a contentious issue and central topic in the future. Teachers feel like they're being attacked on both sides of the political spectrum, um, and so it's likely to remain a contentious issue as we go on. And looking at the next article, the Guide for NEA Leaders and Staff, the purpose of this article is to provide information and resources on selecting teacher evaluation systems. The goal of this is to enhance teaching practices, and they want to stop sorting teachers into categories of whether they're effective or ineffective, but really help out all teachers. And so it's really based on 6 key principles. One is that collaboration is necessary. Open and safe collaboration is necessary so teachers can build their professional communities. Helpful performance measures based on multiple ratings and clear standards. Feedback is most useful as part of a comprehensive teacher development system, in other words. Some integrated evaluation systems. They think that we must link evaluation procedures with curricular standards, professional development activities, targeted support, and human capital decisions. Validated evaluation measures. Measures of teachers' effectiveness need to be based on widely accepted standards that attempt to capture a range of teaching behaviors and use multiple evaluation methods, not just one method of evaluation. And then the inclusion of teachers' input in the evaluative process. Teachers can help provide vital learning goals for the unique circumstances of particular classrooms. And then systems need to be jointly created with the local teachers association. And this they view maybe the most important principle of all. The ideals and visions need to be balanced with the local context and the political reality. And they really do admit that there is no one-size-fits-all approach at the national level. There are going to be lots of different approaches depending on the unique aspects of each school and district. And so it also provides some principles and just some general good things that it could be based off of. So things like the NEA, the principles of professional practice. It provides 10 principles of a quality teacher that we want to maintain. The Interstate Teachers Assessment has 10 standards of quality teachers. And then the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards has 5 propositions and of quality teachers that these evaluation systems need to be based off of. And so this article, it talks about it wants to promote the use of multiple measures to strengthen the teacher evaluation system, as well as contribute to the teacher's professional growth. And then it wants to set the stage for the improvements in teaching and learning. So we must weight measures appropriately. That does not mean that all measures should be based on the student test scores, and it doesn't recommend So therefore, it doesn't recommend that test scores be used as the predominant measure, um, because it's important for the teachers of untested subjects and grades, and for the teachers of English language learners and students with disabilities, that they may not exactly test well, although the teaching practices used are effective. It also recommends the appropriate use of the value added method or value added measures. So if the VAM is used as the sole measure, that's a pretty highly controversial way to use that, but if it's used in a formative evaluation designed to inform and improve practice, that's a less controversial way to use this system. And it wants to understand the multiple measures of student learning. There are multiple measures of student learning. However, most standardized tests are limited in their ability and the accuracy to assess student learning, and so therefore using these as the sole measurement or the primary measurement may not be the most effective use of these measures. Sorry. It wants to select and adapt teacher evaluation tools that are effective. The effectiveness will be measured in the actual classrooms, and so things like using rubrics or surveys, observation instruments, portfolios, artifacts, student learning measures, or you could use a combination of those approaches. You could actually measure those in the classroom. And then working together to pilot the model. The article states that it's imperative for all parties to agree that while the model is being refined, any resulting data will not be used in a high-stakes decision. It stresses the importance that these needs to be tested before it's actually enacted, and the test needs to last for 1 full year. So it goes through each phase of the evaluation process. So therefore, if problems are discovered, the pilot then gives a chance for these problems to be refined and make changes before it's implemented across the school or district as a whole. So overall, this article stressed the need for all levels to work together, and that the NEA recognizes that no system is going to be perfect, and that no measurement will be exact in all circumstances for all teachers, but they can improve teaching and the learning of students, and by working together, we can actually have a system that is good for teachers and students and helps both succeed. I'm looking at the next article, Teacher Evaluation Measures and Systems. In this case, they discuss findings and consideration for designing and implementing meaningful teacher evaluations. It is kind of based on 3 key components that of a successful teacher evaluation systems. The first component, create linked and integrated systems. When you can create these linked and integrated systems, they tie to the evaluation procedures, to curricular standards, professional development activities, and targeted support. The second area looked at was using validated evaluation measures. These they want based on widely accepted standards of teaching that attempt to capture a range of teaching behaviors and use multiple methods and evaluators. And then the third area, establish credibility by involving multiple stakeholders in the design, the development, and the revision of the system, and making the procedures meaningful and transparent to all those involved. The categories and considerations of the evaluation instruments, one was the scoring and training. It recommends looking at several different areas, as well as like if the rubric, to see if it's specific and detailed enough for reliable judgments, and actually the training of the raters themselves. Are the raters thoroughly and regularly trained to maintain the reliability and reduce bias? Are there guidelines for selecting the raters to provide the most accurate scores? And then whether the tests, you can generalize the tests, extrapolate these tests for other areas to get a goal of getting a complete and stable picture of the teaching practice. And then the implication of the interpretation of the test. I mean, is the instrument that is being used, is it being used for what it was originally designed for? Is it biased by factors unrelated to the teaching? The current implementation of the evaluation systems, there's an increased emphasis on the teacher effectiveness rather than teacher quality. Teacher quality is really based primarily on the teacher qualifications, which can be poor predictors of what a good teacher is, but teacher effectiveness focuses on student outcomes, such as the student achievement growth, without considerations for the teacher qualifications or characteristics. So we're looking at the effectiveness or the quality teacher there. Increased pressure to include student achievement growth in all evaluations. It actually recommends using that. It can be, but not all the changes are going to be popular, but may provide some valuable information. So changes like using student achievement growth as a measure of teacher effectiveness is not generally going to be embraced, but the information about the student learning growth when it's linked to individual teachers can provide some valuable evidence that can help teachers and administrators identify weaknesses in curriculum, maybe the materials or the instructional practices being used. And so to improve the conceptual model is being used to improve teaching and learning. The evaluation tools must be complex. With the complex nature of teaching and learning, it really suggests that the evaluation tools must also be complex. And there is no one-size-fits-all. There is no measure that has proven to be fully accurate, to be a fully accurate representation of the highly complex tasks of teaching. And so many of these articles realize that there's not a perfect system, or we have not found a perfect system out there yet, at least. It recommends using a variety of measures and indicators to support teachers in the education of students, and that evaluation systems should help teachers reach their full potential. In my district, the evaluation process is based on teachers. If you are in 3 groups, Group 1, you're in your first 2 years of employment. You're actually going to be evaluated once each semester. Group 2, if you're in your 3rd and 4th year of employment in the district, you'll be evaluated once each year. And Group 3, if you have more than 4 years of employment, you're going to be evaluated at least once per year every 3 years. But it does state that this may happen more if the administrators deem it to be necessary. You're evaluated on 4 areas. The evaluations are divided into 4 areas. The steps that are taken is the teacher completes the planning questions, the class profile, class information, and teaching profile questions. It's a series of questions that the teacher answers. You have a pre-conference with the administrator to talk about those questions and the lesson coming up, and then the administrator does the actual observation, and then the administrator does the data analysis and completes the district forms, and basically bases the teacher in 4 different categories of unsatisfactory, basic, proficient, or distinguished. And then there's an appraisal conference, a post-conference, where the teacher is provided verbal and written feedback, and the teacher and the evaluator both sign the evaluation forms. Now, it is stated that when you sign those forms, it does not mean that you agree with it. It just means that you were provided with the form, you went over it, and the information was discussed. It does not mean that the teacher agrees with the form. And so the appraiser then gives a copy to the teacher and submits the original to the personnel office. And then, if it's needed, if deemed by the administrator, teachers can be put on a plan of improvement to improve their teaching for the future. The recourse for a teacher in the evaluative process: teachers have the right to submit a written explanation regarding any of the evaluation any parts of the evaluation for inclusion in their personal file, but it must be completed within 2 weeks of the evaluation conference. If a teacher feels that their evaluation was inaccurate, they do have the right of appeal. The teacher must, in our district, the teacher must contact the superintendent of schools. The superintendent must establish or will establish a conference with the evaluation review committee, and the teacher must provide a written statement as to the grounds of the complaint. And then a hearing will take place within 20 days of receiving the complaint. The evidence is presented by the parties, and the teacher and the complainant has the opportunity for rebuttal. And then within 20 days of the hearing, the evaluation review committee makes a written report as to its findings and recommendations. In my district, for teachers, if they feel that they were unjustly let go, the teacher may request a meeting with the board. But this is only for teachers who have taught for 4 or more continuous years in the district, or who were terminated before their contract expired. It is not available for teachers who were just non-renewed in their first 3 years of teaching. So the board then must file a written request to the clerk of the board within 10 days, and the board will hold a meeting within 21 days of the request. It's in an executive session. The teacher may have the local association representative present. The representative may speak on the teacher's behalf, but neither party, neither the board nor the teacher, has the right for legal counsel to be present. And then the teacher has the opportunity to respond to the dismissal reasons, and then within 21 days the board will reconsider this and make a final decision. So some legal cases, researching some legal cases where teachers or groups had filed a suit against the district, came across one that was in the Garden City Education Association versus the School District of the City of Garden City. This was in Michigan in 2013. And in this case, there were 2 formerly tenured teachers that brought a suit against the district for being laid off due to budgetary restraints after some poor reviews. But shortly before this, the Michigan State Legislature had enacted new laws that focus on retaining effective teachers when making personnel decisions. And in fact, it had a set step of procedures that districts should follow, in that a teacher's individual performance, which was to be the majority factor in making decisions, should happen first. Secondly, a teacher's significant and relevant accomplishments and contributions to the district should be considered. And then third, the teacher's relevant special training should be considered. And actually, the statutes specifically states that it prohibits using the length of service or tenure as a status in the primary or determining factor in personnel reduction decisions. Rather, that a teacher's length of service or tenure may only be considered as a tiebreaker if the other 3 factors were equal. And so these teachers were let go as they were deemed that they were not the most effective teachers available in the staff. And these teachers further argued that the district unilaterally developed new required evaluation instruments, which was again against the state statutes, which stated that the school boards, with the involvement of the teachers and school administrators, adopt and implement a rigorous, transparent, and fair performance evaluation system. So they were arguing that they did not do it together, but rather the district unilaterally decided these. The result of this case was the court ruled that no process is due to these tenured teachers who were laid off for budgetary reasons, because stated in the Michigan state law that they were laid off following the state law. So the district did follow the state law in these layoffs, and that unless they could prove that the budgetary reasons were not bona fide, and then these teachers may have a case. And then it further stated that teachers failed to establish the district violated the state law and the development of the performance review evaluations. And this kind of follows some similar cases that we looked at in some of the articles that we reviewed in this module as well. Finally, How would I ensure that I am following legal issues associated with the evaluation process? I think the first is communicate the superintendent or other counsel. It's important that the superintendent not be blindsided by disgruntled teachers or anything like that, so keep them informed as well. Stay abreast of current court rulings. Professional organizations, KSB memberships can provide some great resources for this. Really follow state and district procedures. Follow them explicitly. Do not vary from those. Um, to protect the school and the district, and then participate in professional development opportunities. How could I do my job better? Continue to participate in these opportunities, and then actually provide those opportunities, great professional development opportunities for the staff as well. Finally, my references. Thank you.